We got it. All right, we'll call K-12 sub to order. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Representatives Carringer, Cassada, here. Clemens, here. Hurt, Love, here. Chairman Sapicki, here. Chairman Reagan, here. Chairman White, Chairman Haston,
here.
Chairman, you have a quorum.
All right, is there any personal orders before we begin? Seeing none, we do have a bit of a full schedule tonight, so we will get right into item number 1, House Bill 1207 by Leader Gant. Do I have a motion? Second. Properly motioned. Leader Gant, I believe you have an amendment.
Yeah, it rewrites the bill.
All right. On the amendment. Second. Is it 5656 is what we have?
Correct.
All right. We have Amendment 5656 in front of us. Let's go ahead and vote on this without objection. All those in favor of adopting Amendment 5656, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. We are back on the bill as amended. Leader Gant, you are recognized on 1207.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. What this bill does is it defines what a learning pod is in the code, and it goes through a laundry list of how it defines it in the code and kind of codifies it in the description of what a learning pod is here in the state of Tennessee. My intent is, I've talked to most of the members here, and my intent is to just move it to full, continue the conversation through the summer, and then we'll pick it back up in full next year if the committee will indulge me with that approach.
Members, you've heard the explanation of the bill. Does anybody have any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we'll be voting on House Bill 1207. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you, Committee.
Let me actually do a little cleanup here and let everybody know kind of where we're at on a few of these and help me out as we go. So what's the first one? Number 3 is rolled to next year's calendar. Item number 12, House Bill, what was that again? 422 is off notice. Item number 15, 858 is off notice. Item number 17, House Bill 1331 is off notice. And what number? 20? Item number 20? Item number 20 is off notice. That is 727, House Bill 727. And that's all for now. All right. That brings us, we have somebody's waiting for the appropriations, so we're going to go ahead and take up item number, which one is POTS?
POTS is number 21.
All right, item number 21. Excuse me. That's House Bill 1020. Representative Lamar will be carrying that. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned, and I believe it has an amendment.
Yes, sir.
And what is the drafting code on that?
6227.
Properly motioned. Does this rewrite the bill?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll go ahead and get it in the right posture here. Without objection, we'll be voting to adopt Amendment 6227. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. We are back on the bill as amended. You are recognized on House Bill 1020.
Thank you so much. What my amendment does, which rewrites the bill to make the bill, it clarifies that students who will be 18 on or before the next election should be provided with voter registration information via hand delivery, mail, or email. The information must be prepared by the local county election commission or the the Secretary of State. In simple terms, this is basically just notifying 18-year-olds in school that you're eligible to register to vote, and to tell them that you can go register to vote either with your county election commissioner or with our Secretary of State. Is nothing more than that. It could be as simple as an email once a year or a sheet of paper we give them at the schoolhouse.
All right, thank you for that explanation. We actually have somebody here that was down to talk on this bill. If Mr. Jim Rye is still wanting, all right. With that, does anybody have any questions for the sponsor on this bill? Chairman Subcommittee, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. Just for clarification on the amendment, it just states that anything that's going to be given to the students must be given to them by the election commission, the local county election commission, or through the Secretary of State. No outside lobbies will be allowed to go into our schools, and this will not affect any type of education during the day.
Representative Lamar?
Yes. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Chairman Subcommittee, absolutely. And it states it by the local county election commission or the Secretary of State, nobody else.
Any further questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we'll be voting on House Bill 1020. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. House Bill 1020 is on to full education. Thank you.
Thank you, committee.
All right, that takes us back to item number 2. It's Leader Camper. Yes, Leader Camper. House Bill 1586. Do I have a motion? Second. Properly motioned. Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. House Bill 1586 is a bill that Senator Yarborough and I put together to adequately fund the BEP formula. Every year we hear about how the BEP is underfunded. We hear about the differences in opinion about what fully funded means. And so we were seeking to fully fund the BEP formula based on what we say in the statute it needs to be done. This year, members, we received a lot of funds from CARES dollars, and COVID-19 has really shown a bright light on some of the deficiencies in our school system, some of the things we've neglected over a period of time. And I know that there will be reports given back to us on the effects that the pandemic has had on our system and the remedies put in place with the funding that has come down. And with the American Rescue Plan, we expect that there will be additional funding. So what I'd like to do is give that a chance to come in, see what we're doing with some of the legislation we've already passed to rectify some of the things our system was dealing with, and then come back next year with a bill if we need to pursue this issue further. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to roll it to next year's calendar.
Thank you, Leader Camper. And without objection, roll to next year's calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee.
Thank you. All right. We are going to jump ahead just a little bit. Is Representative Gillespie? Yes. We're going to go to item number 5, House Bill 631. Do I have a motion? Motion. Properly motioned. Do you have an amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. I do have an amendment.
All right. And properly motioned. What is the drafting code on that?
5482.
All right. I think that's what we have. All right. Does it rewrite the bill? Does it make the bill?
It makes the bill. I mean, it does not rewrite the bill. Excuse me.
Okay. I think we'll go ahead and get this bill in the right posture. We'll go ahead without objection and adopt amendment or vote to adopt amendment 5482. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed say no. We are back on the bill as amended. Representative Gillespie, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this bill does, it requires the Tennessee School of Deaf, together with the West Tennessee School of Deaf, to maintain a deaf mentor program and to help establish that, to assist families and agencies in implementing home-based programming for children and youth that are deaf. And it establishes a parental advisory role in that program. And what it seeks to tackle is to give that young population that currently we're not really touching with the current 3 schools and the 3 grand divisions, and allowing them to get up onto speed and onto par with their peers that do not have language or hearing impairments. And I welcome any questions.
Thank you for that explanation. Members, do you have any questions for the sponsor? Representative Cassidy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to commend you on this bill. Representative, this will change people's lives. This will change young people's lives for the rest of their life. And because if they're deaf, they just get behind. And their career opportunities and every other aspect's close to them, and this will change that. So big kudos to you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we will be voting on House Bill 631. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. House Bill 631 moves on to full education.
Thank you.
That brings us to item number 6, House Bill 982 by Representative Gillespie. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned. Representative Gillespie, you are recognized on House Bill 982.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. I think I spoke to a lot of you about this before. This is something that is an ongoing bill that I wish to request that this committee sends it to a summer study.
You've heard the request. Without objection, we will we will send House Bill 982 to summer study.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 7, House Bill 1288 by Representative Johnson. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned. Representative Johnson, you are recognized on House Bill 1288.
Oh. Huh. Hello?
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to roll this bill.
All right. Okay. Without objection, we'll be rolling House Bill 1288 to the Hill. That brings us to item number 8, House Bill 1289. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned. You are recognized, Representative Johnson, on House Bill 1289.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one is sort of been taken care of by the federal funds, and so I'm going to take that one off notice.
All right. Without objection, House Bill 1289 is off notice. Brings us to item number 9, House Bill 1294. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned. Representative Johnson, you are recognized on House Bill 1294.
Okay, I have an amendment on this one.
All right, and we properly motioned. What is your drafting code?
5878.
All right, that's what we have. Without objection, we'll be voting to adopt Amendment 5878. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. We are back on the bill as amended. You are recognized.
Okay, we have a strange glitch in the code that penalizes Tennesseans if you have been in Tennessee and taught, and you leave Tennessee, go to another state for a few years. So you have, say you teach in Kentucky, you have a valid Kentucky license, but you've been gone from Tennessee and your Tennessee license has expired. When you come back, even though you have a current Kentucky license, you can't teach in Tennessee because your Tennessee license expired. And so what this does is get rid of that glitch, and it reactivates. It doesn't renew, but it reactivates your Tennessee license so that you're not held to a different standard that somebody who just lived in Kentucky their whole life and came to Tennessee was able to teach. But if you lived in Tennessee first, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Members, you've heard the explanation of the bill. Any questions for the sponsor? Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I clear up a little confusion here.
Mm-hmm.
When you say lived in Tennessee, you meant they were licensed in Tennessee?
Lived and licensed and taught.
Okay.
I've got several constituents with this issue.
So the question I have related to that then, is there a time limit after which this is no longer operative, or could they move to Kentucky and stay there for 15 years, 20 years and come back, or how would this work?
Reverend Johnson?
They have to have a current license from wherever they are and be teaching currently and be updated. So say they're in Kentucky and everything is current with their Kentucky license, even if they left Tennessee 15 years ago, and say that their license was deactivated like 8 years, they're good for 10 years. So they were gone longer than that, so their Tennessee license is no longer active, but they have a current active license in the state where they live. And with the teacher shortage, this is legislation that will get more teachers activated.
Chairman Sapiki, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. So kind of on the lines of what the questioning is here, the concern I have is a teacher that is teaching in Tennessee and moves to Kentucky for a year and comes back. I understand your issue there. A teacher that teaches in Tennessee, graduates college, teaches for a couple years, and then takes a job in California and spends 35 years in California teaching, and then wants to come back home into Tennessee, you're seeing different standards, possibly different teaching techniques in Tennessee, And I think to just not have any type of timetable there to say you can just leave, and then whenever you want to come back to Tennessee, no matter what we're doing in education, we're going to make it okay for you to go into the classroom?
Well, we take other licenses from California, so we don't, we're only penalizing people who lived in Tennessee first. Folks who never lived in Tennessee and have been teaching for however many years can come to Tennessee and teach right then. Why would we penalize somebody because they lived in Tennessee first?
Representative Johnson, is the state board okay with this change or with this bill?
And the language was the department worked on that as well. So,
okay. Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think you may have cleared up the question I was going to ask. If a person never lived in Tennessee and taught in another state and comes here to teach, will accept their license and in some instances make provisions to speed the process for them to get licensed in Tennessee. If a person who happened to live in Tennessee first and teach in Tennessee and move to that very same state comes back, there's a glitch. And so you're just trying to clean the glitch up.
Yes, correct, because they're actually penalized for being in Tennessee first. Okay. And two of the situations that I have, these people have gotten increased degrees. One's a reading specialist and one's a specialist in math. And, these are things that we desperately need in Tennessee.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions? Chairman Sapiki?
So just to expand on that one more time, we have a reciprocity agreement with every LEA in the country, with every state in the country. We do.
It's my understanding.
Get the answer if you can. No, you can't talk, but he can give you the answer. He can talk to you.
Members, at the conclusion of the evening, there will be pizza awaiting in the cloakroom. Just wanted to, during this brief intermission, give you an update on that.
Thank you, Chairman.
You'll have to bring your own drinks. Representative Johnson, you are recognized.
So if you want to get the long answer, we can ask him. But we're all members of a consortium, and as members of the consortium, there is reciprocity.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll be voting on House Bill 1294. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee.
Okay, we've got two that we need to get out of here, and then we'll come back. We have a couple that we're needing to get in and out of the room. So we'll take up item number 10, House Bill 1443 by Chairman Vaughn. Do I have a motion? Second. Properly motioned, and I believe there is an amendment. Chairman Vaughn?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The amendment 6213.
Motion?
Properly motioned. Without objection, we'll be voting to adopt, sorry, does this make your bill?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get it in the right posture here. We'll be voting to adopt Amendment 6213. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Ayes have it. We are back on House Bill 1443 as amended. Chairman Vaughn, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill proposes to amend the code for pending teacher free agency. When they're decided not to be retained, then they, the current code is written in such there's, the teacher has to receive notice within 5 business days following the last instructional day. We've seen issues where that has either the mail has failed, maybe sometimes the person has not received the letter, and in this case, the LEAs have no recourse. And so what this bill contemplates is, as opposed to changing the word receive, change the word sent, so that the LEA, whenever they take the positive action of sending the notice, that's when the 5 days begin. And it clarifies that the last instructional day is the last day of the school year. There is a minor change that we would be amenable to, that TEA has brought us, that if we don't get it on in here via verbal, I would propose it in the full committee. It says, as opposed to clarifying that the last instructional day is the last day of the school year on which the teachers are required to report to work, TEA requested that the last instructional day be the last day that students are in the classroom. And so we as long as it's defined, that's fine with us. And then it allows the notice to be either delivered by regular mail, certified mail, or by email. And given the fact that the teacher has been communicating with their principal and the LEA all during that year via email, we believe that may be the most appropriate manner to make sure that they receive it. So that's what this bill would do if it moves on.
Thank you for that. Any questions for the sponsor? Chairman Sapicki.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go ahead and make that motion to add that verbal amendment on to get it in the proper position.
Second. On the line, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I can.
Yes, go ahead. She was.
I have it edited for that, ma'am.
Yes, she was going. Go ahead and read that one more time.
If you look on the amendment, right up in the line above Section 4, where it says school year on which strike teachers and change to students are required to report to work, change work to school. So then it would read, as used in this section, the last instructional day means the last day of the school year on which students are required to report to school.
Members will be voting to adopt this verbal amendment without objection. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. The amendment is adopted. We will roll that into one amendment. And does anybody have any further questions for the sponsor on this bill?
Question on the bill.
Question's been called. Seeing no objections, we'll be voting on House Bill 1443. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. House Bill 1443 on to full education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee.
All right. We will be taking one more here out of turn for scheduling purposes. Item number 16, House Bill 808 by Representative Powell. Do I have a motion? Motion and a second. Representative Powell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. The bill is written would ban the practice of corporal punishment in our public schools. Tennessee is one of 19 states that still permits the harmful practices of corporal punishment in public schools as early as pre-K, despite its ban in all branches of the military, mental health and drug treatment programs, jails and prisons, and other public institutions. Based on the most recent data on the practices combined by the Tennessee Department of Education, there were 2,537 instances of in-school corporal punishment reported. Well-documented studies find to hold multiple negative impacts on student learning, physical and mental health, and overall school experience. Research studies, reports, and position statements from the National Institute of Health, the American Psychological Association, American Academy of Pediatrics, and dozens of other medical and science-based organizations link corporal punishment in schools to decreased verbal capacity and development in young children, increased aggression, lower levels of academic achievement, increased absenteeism, in-school avoidance, and not to mention physical injury. Within the past month, doctors and researchers at the University of Michigan released a study that connects corporal punishment on the same negative impacts associated with ACAs or adverse childhood experiences that traumatize kids. In addition to national professional groups, a host of Tennessee-based state research education advocacy organizations, including the Education Trust in Tennessee, the Tennessee School Counselor Association, the Tennessee Chapter of the American Association of Pediatrics, the Tennessee Association of School Psychologists, and the Tennessee Association of School Social Workers all recognize the research findings and highlight the significant damage this practice inflicts on our students and how it diminishes school environments. Our schools should be safe havens where Tennessee students feel valued, welcomed, and nurtured to learn and grow without fear of physical harm. Mr. Chairman, I just want to say I will be taking this bill off notice, but I will continue to work on this. There were a couple issues that were brought to me by a department. We want to try to continue to work on this bill further, as well as make sure the advocacy groups that want to advocate have time to do that, which I know we're limited because we're still in the pandemic, but hopefully bring this bill back next year and get consideration of this committee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Representative Powell, for your efforts on that. Without objection, House Bill 808 is off notice. It takes us back to item number 11, House Bill 1131. Properly motioned and properly sanitized. House Bill 1131. Chairman Farmer, you are recognized, and I believe you have an amendment?
Yes, I do, and that amendment makes the bill.
All right, and what's the drafting code?
It is 5639.
All right, do I have a motion? Second. Properly motioned. We will be going ahead and get this in the right posture. We'll be voting to adopt Amendment 5639. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed say no. We are back on the bill as amended. You are recognized on 1131.
All right, members, and what this bill does is that currently schools have background checks every once in a while. And here currently, I guess, over in Memphis, that there were some background checks done and a bunch of employees, school employees lost their jobs, right? And it's for low-level, some things were low-level misdemeanors that happened 20, 25, 30 years ago, maybe when somebody's 20 or 21 years old, nonviolent offenses, had nothing to do with children, maybe misdemeanor offenses or something like that. So what my bill says is this, is that in order for, and this would be discretionary to the LEA, to any public charter school or child care program, that if a person was convicted of a misdemeanor offense, the misdemeanor conviction occurred more than 20 years ago, preceding the date of application for employment, and the misdemeanor offense for which the person was convicted did not involve a minor. If that was the case, then the LEA would have discretion whether to keep that person on or not, as an employee, a teacher, whatnot. So if it was a felon, if it involved a sexual offense, I'm not aware of any misdemeanor that's a sexual offense. If so, it would involve a minor, and it clearly takes that out as well. So I think this bill would allow for LEAs to make, within their discretion, to make the decision whether to keep that individual hired there at the school or not. So it just sets some parameters there, and it's 20 years. So if an individual's gone 20 years and not gotten in any trouble, and it's a misdemeanor offense, something like this, I think it's fair to give the LEAs the discretion to whether or not to keep them employed.
Members, you've heard Representative Castro, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Excellent bill, Chairman. And I got to be honest, I would like to see you or someone on this committee bring an amendment in full committee to cut that down to, 5 years. I mean, if you're 24, 25 years old and you did something stupid when you were 20 or 18, it's going to catch up with you. So Mr. Chairman, I know you don't like verbal amendments, but I would like to make that, or sponsor, would you just prefer you bring it next to full committee?
I'm at the will of the committee. I think we're not, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Chairman Farmer.
I'm so sorry. We're just trying to move the needle here, and if next year we come back and we see, hey, there's been 5 people, maybe we might want to reduce that, but we just want to see that we get good policy passed and move in that direction.
I think we'll definitely, Chairman White, we'll talk if, I think that this bill's got a good future going out of this committee today, but I think that we can maybe work on something if you do want to improve upon it. But Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. And I just want to mention, this is really a fix from an unintentional consequence. We were talking about this last year, I believe, where it was kind of catching a lot of employees in our schools, and we talked about this last year. So you're really bringing a fix to that, right?
I am. Oh, excuse me.
Chairman Farmer?
Yes, that's the intent.
Right, so that's what we're working on. Yeah, thank you. Good bill. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll be voting on House Bill 1131. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Committee.
Yes, Representative Cassidy.
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman, as you leave, I really would urge you to bring an amendment back for the committee, full committee, to discuss 5 years, 7 years, whatever you think, you and the leadership on this committee think. But I would encourage you to do that if you would.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Farmer. We'll go back to item number 4. House Bill 1534 by Chairlady Weaver. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned. Chairlady Weaver, you are recognized on House Bill 1534.
Okay.
Properly motioned. You are recognized.
Thank you.
And I believe you have an amendment with this.
I do. Amendment that makes the bill.
All right. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned. What's your drafting code on that?
I have 50. Oh, wait a minute. That's the other one. I have so many. 5839.
Is that what we're looking at? 5839. All right. We will go ahead without objection. Go ahead and vote to adopt Amendment 5839. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Amendment is adopted. We are back on the bill as amended. You are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. We're working really hard to get qualified teachers in front of our children. And as you know, we have a huge shortage of teachers. We're doing a lot of cool things, I think, in this General Assembly to have incentives for good teachers to come across state line. We passed the reciprocity bill the other night. We're also doing, we're just saying Tennessee is welcome for good teachers to come to our classroom. So what this bill, the spirit of this bill is to create a new practitioner license for persons seeking to become licensed teachers and requires the State Board of Education to approve an alternative teacher endorsement and licensure pathway. As I said, the amendment rewrites the bill, and it would take effect July 1 of 2022. This is important too, because we're going back to school. We're getting our schools open, and we need teachers to teach our kids.
Thank you for that explanation. Before we get into questions, we do have another amendment that we need to address that Chairman White had filed. I think it is Amendment 5984. Is that correct, Chairman White?
Yes, sir.
Do I have a second? Properly motioned. Chairman White, you are recognized to explain your Amendment 5984.
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairlady Weaver, discussed this with you. Really, I just brought this so we can have the discussion. And I know your viewpoint, and I know your viewpoints on this. But really, I want to have the discussion. If we are requiring our EPPs, our education program providers, or universities to give an assessment of the endorsement when they get it, I need to understand maybe why our LEAs shouldn't be required to do the teachers going through the LEA program shouldn't also have to go through the assessment. And that's just the gist of the amendment, that it would require that if you're going to get an endorsement from your LEA, just like you do your EPP, that you would still have to take the assessment. And that is the gist of the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Members, you've heard the explanation of the Amendment 5984. Does anybody have any questions for Chairman White? Chairman Sapicki, you're recognized on Amendment 5984.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to speak in opposition to this amendment. It creates multiple problems with the Department of Education, the Governor's Office, and this General Assembly. And let me go into some detail here. We are currently running a bill that's going to be in our full Education Committee tomorrow that permits a waiver for 1 year due to COVID on licensure and endorsements for end-of-course testing. So the first problem we have is if we pass this, we're going to be in direct opposition to that bill, which that bill was sponsored by the Board of Education and looked at by the Department of Education and both signed off on. That's the first problem with the bill. The second problem with the bill is we are currently in the process of House Bill 782 by Governor Lee's office to eliminate Common Core in the state of Tennessee. So if this amendment will be in direct conflict with the governor's bill, House Bill 782, and the reason why, when you go to the Praxis testing website, and the information I'm going to give the committee here is pulled directly from the Praxis website, and I'll be happy to read it verbatim into the record. From the Praxis website, it says the Praxis program continues to update tests to better measure what teachers need to know and be able to do in order to implement the Common Core state standards in their classrooms. The Praxis 2 English Language Arts Content Knowledge Exam is aligned with Common Core state standards. Test preview, the test is aligned with Common Core standards for language arts and mathematics. The Kaplan testing. The Praxis Core was created and is administered by the Educational Testing Service and meets the standards put forth by the College of Career Readiness Standards and the Common Core state standards. Only 30, and here's one that's very troubling about the Praxis test, Mr. Chairman. Only 38% of black candidates and 57% of Hispanic candidates ever passed the most common teacher licensing test, compared to 75% of white candidates. And then lastly, the Praxis, this is from the Praxis website. The Praxis program continues to update tests to better measure what teachers need to know and be able to do in order to implement the Common Core state standards in their classrooms. If we put this amendment on, no disrespect at all to my colleague, and this is a greater issue we need to look at as a state, is if we are passing legislation right now to remove Common Core from our classrooms, then we should be evaluating our teachers to be able to teach Tennessee standards. Having conversations with high level of the Department of Education, they see an issue here that maybe we need to do what other states have done to create their own tests for Tennessee to make sure the teachers coming out are aligning to Tennessee standards to be able to teach in our classrooms. They still have the opportunity if they want to go to Kentucky or another state that they want to teach at and they want to take the Praxis for that. That's fine with me. But our Tennessee teachers, if we're going to require them in this amendment to take the Praxis, as I've explained here, we're in 3 different positions in opposition where the department and the Governor Lee are not lined up. So I'd make a motion to table this.
All right, properly second. We will be voting on the tabling motion. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment has been tabled. We are back on the bill as amended with amendment drafting code 5839. Chairlady Weaver, do you have anything further you'd like to add before I open it up for further questions?
I just want to add to the comment. Again, we have in no way do we want unqualified teachers in front of our kids. That's not the spirit of this. But I just find it egregious when you have a teacher, as the bill says, they've been teaching for 6 or more years. They've been evaluated over and over again by their districts. Our LEAs in our home districts, they need the flexibility. They know what teacher can stand before their children. This bill gives them that flexibility. And I do want to add to a fact about the Praxis test. Some of the #1 state in the United States, Massachusetts, that is #1 for performance for students, they don't have a Praxis test. They've got their own standard, their own thing they go for. And so it's a revenue generator. It's something that our teachers have to pay out of their own pocket to take it. And I just think it needs to go away. That's all I need to say.
Thank you, Chairlady Weaver. Representative Love, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do agree with you that we need to get more teachers into the classrooms. How do we ensure that these teachers will know the content that they're teaching?
Chairlady Weaver?
From what I know, Representative Love, I understand that most of the teachers that do this stay within their own camp of learning, most generally. They're just looking for an endorsement to teach in that camp. And again, the flexibility of the local LEAs, they also know too, and they would monitor it and they would know. So that's all I know.
Representative Love.
Thank you. And let me be fully transparent. I have a university in my district that has an educational prep program, Tennessee State University.
Mm-hmm.
And my concern is that in an effort to increase teachers and create this other pipeline, it disadvantages those students because they'll be required to do different things when it regards content, knowledge, and there may be a difference in these teachers coming through this particular program, particularly if we don't have the same standards of content knowledge testing for the teachers coming through this program for this endorsement versus our educational prep programs.
Chair Lady Weaver.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Some of it, I have an example. Maybe this will help. I always work best with a story. So I have an example of a teacher that lived in Chattanooga, and she goes to work on her degree to increase her endorsement in another state, and she comes back to Tennessee, and she also graduated from the University of Lee University, and she's a lifelong resident of Tennessee. She taught and teaches in Tennessee, and her husband and her went to work in Georgia across the state line to work on their masters there, and then she wants to come back here, and she's told she has to take a praxis. That just, to me, is just a block in the road for her. She's taken all this education. She's got her master's. I don't understand and the praxis, again, is something she's got to pay for. Most of the time, some of these praxis tests are put up to, they're conditioned for you to fail them. I just think it's a money revenue. I really do. I really think that if we get rid of that and we let our local LEAs have the flexibility to choose who should be in front of their classrooms, I think that would be a wiser direction to go. And then in the meantime, our state can put together our own standards, and we won't be teaching them a Common Core. They won't be taking a Common Core test because we're trying to do everything we can to get rid of that. And it seems kind of odd that, well, now our teachers are taking a praxis test that teaches them how to teach Common Core. I don't think that's good either.
Representative Love.
Thank you for that information. And I think for me, the issue is that if we are requiring these tests, it doesn't take away the autonomy of the LEA to choose who is before their students. It simply ensures that that particular educator knows the content, and we have some measure to see that. And my colleague made reference to the issues with praxis tests for black educators versus white educators, and I appreciate that. What's more concerning for me is that when you look at the number of teachers who are often in front of black students, statistically, black students oftentimes have more teachers in front of them that don't have the major or minor in the subject matter that they're teaching. And my concern is that if we go down this path, we want to make sure that at least those teachers have that content. Now, they may have the major. I want to make sure, and they may be in that camp, but I want to make sure they still have that content knowledge, and I don't know any other way to do that. And that's my concern with the legislation, because I don't want that to be a situation.
Chair Lady Weaver.
And your concern is merited, sir. But again, the bill does describe that, again, if a teacher has been teaching for more than 6 years, okay, so she's got the experience, he or she, and they are above expectation, and they are, quote, significantly above expectation. They are a level 4 or a level 5 on their most recent evaluation. again, they're being monitored, I believe. In my humble opinion, I believe they are. And I believe that they are duly merited to be exempt from taking a praxis. And, I mean, you've got that constant evaluation. You've got that constant presentation. I just feel that gives us more flexibility for our LEAs.
Sure.
And again, we have a lot of teachers in front of our classrooms now that aren't even licensed. So, you know, that's a whole other topic. But this is a bill for our teachers, an incentive to bring them here to Tennessee and get to work. Thank you.
Members, without objection, we did have two people that had requested to speak on this. So without objection, we will go out of session and allow them to have their 3 minutes each, and also to have a chance to answer any follow-up questions we may have. So without objection, we will go out of session, and we will start with Charlie Buffalino from the Department of Education. Just please come up and state your name and who you represent for the record, please. And you have 3 minutes for remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions if needed.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Charlie Buffalino with the Department of Education. I'm joined by my colleague,
Jack Powers, Director of Policy, Department of Education.
So, Chairman, members, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this legislation. And I also would say before I get into it, we're appreciative of Chair Lady Weaver bringing this bill. We think it's very important that we as a state are looking at innovative models by which to provide additional pathways for our educators, additional endorsements, and having districts have flexibility to look at that is an important thing, and it should be looked at very closely. It's something we're working on even at the department to try to provide some of those opportunities free of charge. The one issue that we have here, or the concern, is having some form of content exam being needed for folks to sort of get an additional endorsement. If we want to have a broader conversation about whether that should be the praxis or something else, that's certainly something we're open to. If members recall, the Literacy Success Act actually called for a Tennessee-specific assessment that will, in time, replace one of the praxis assessments. But we do have some concerns about creating one alternative prep program that would not require some sort of content exam to be taken. And this would be the only one. Existing alternative prep programs require a content assessment. I think one particularly important example is we have an alternative pathway for job embedded. So if you've been a chemist your whole career, you want to come back into the classroom, there's an accelerated sort of pathway you can do there. You still have to take a content exam. This would be the one area of the state that wouldn't. And so we think that that is important, that there is some sort of quality content check. And then there's also just a couple things I wanted to address that were said earlier. We do not view this bill in any way of being in conflict with House Bill 525. That deals with offering permits and waivers on a one-year basis to deal with classroom shortages acute from COVID. This is talking about additional endorsements that go on to a certification or permanent. If you were to have that additional certification, you would not need a permit or waiver. So there's sort of different pathways depending on where an educator is. And the second issue I want to address is that Common Core was brought up. Common Core is not, or excuse me, the praxis exam is not aligned to Common Core state standards. The praxis exam is based on a series of professional assessments, and my colleague Jack can get into more detail if there are questions. And the portion being cited from the website is from 2014. And I would remind members of the committee that in 2014, not only was Tennessee aligned to the Common Core state standards, but so were 45 other states in the country. Much like textbooks, changing standards require assessment providers to adjust. And the material being quoted was a crosswalk, not a standards alignment for purposes of the praxis, but to show to educators, here are some ways in which this content can align. And they have done similar crosswalks for other state standards as well. This administration is very serious about closing loopholes that exist between Common Core state standards. If we were worried about the praxis assessment being aligned to Common Core, that is certainly something that we would be looking to address. But I do want to, in sort of closing my comment, stress, if there is a desire to have a broader conversation about what that content exam should be, about what are cost structures dealing with that, that is an important conversation for everyone to have.
But as this bill is currently written, it creates for a new program in terms of districts being allowed to do these additional endorsements that wouldn't be tested yet. It would be new, and we do need to try this. It would be the only pathway that exists, whether it's a traditional prep program or one of the many alternative pathways that would not require some sort of content exam for teachers. And we think that is a very important thing to consider moving forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for Department of Education? Seeing none, any further comments that you would like to make?
No, I would just close. I think it's very important the General Assembly is looking at these. Teacher shortages is something we take very seriously at the department. We're devoting a lot of our brain power and resources to try to address those, and we are hopeful that those efforts, along with efforts of the General Assembly, will pay dividends in attacking this important problem going forward.
All right, thank you both. We also have on the list Ben Torres, if he would like to come up and from the TSBA, and just make sure you state your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Ben Torres with the Tennessee School Board Association. So this is a bill that we support, and I want to address really, instead of going into the whole bill, the checks and balances that are in this piece of legislation, because I think that's where a lot of the conversation is centered about. When you look at the amendment that Chair Lady Weaver has on this bill, you kind of have to look at the different parts and how they all act together. First, this is an option for a district, and it's only an option for teachers that are currently actively employed in that district and have a professional teaching license. So that's the first check. And then if you go down to C, the district teacher training program must certify to the department that the educator meets the requirements established by the state board. And then when you look in subsection E, you have another check and balance that only allows the exception to the assessment if they've been teaching for 6 years and they're a level 4 or level 5 teacher. So they're performing above what we expect. Now, going back to the literacy point, we did work with Chair Lady Weaver and other stakeholders to include an exception for the new K-3 endorsement that's found in the literacy bill that you all passed during special session. But ultimately, this is a bill to address our teacher shortage. We have qualified personnel that are currently in the classroom that are performing better than what we've set for them in our teacher evaluations, and giving them a path to get an additional endorsement, working with their district. The state board has the complete authority to develop the requirements and set out those different requirements and what's expected of those teachers, not only before, but after the fact. So I think there are several different checks and balances in this piece of legislation to address a lot of the concerns, hopefully address the concerns that the members have.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. Does anybody have any questions? Seeing none, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We will go back into session. Chairman Sapicki, you are recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify some information that was stated by the department. The information that I read to the committee was pulled from the Praxis website in 2021. They may have been put on there in 2014, but it's still on the website in 2021. And the issue we have is with what Praxis is aligned to off their website with Common Core, we have a problem with House Bill 782 that is sponsored by the governor to eliminate Common Core in Tennessee. So I would just urge us to let's move this legislation forward, and then let's start the conversation with the department. Some of your better performing states in the country have their own tests. We can start to implement that right away in Tennessee to make sure that our teachers, when they graduate, are going to take a Tennessee test to make sure they're aligned to Tennessee standards. Thank you.
Any other questions for our sponsor? Seeing none, question's been called. Seeing no objections, we'll be voting on House Bill 1534. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. On to full education. All right, where does that take us?
Number 14, like,
That's off notice. 14's off notice. Did I say that at the beginning? All right, item 14, in case I didn't mention it earlier, item 14, House Bill 1501 is off notice. 13. Hold on a second. Oh. Have I done that yet, though? No. We were going to roll item 13 to the Hill. That brings us to item 18, House Bill 438 by Representative Harris. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned. Representative Harris, you're recognized on House Bill 438.
Thank you so much, Chairman. And so this bill, House Bill 438, would be a special education grant, basically from the department to be able to give to the LEAs if they need additional funding to help with special education needs. Right now in our state, obviously the BEP is in place, and I don't want to touch the BEP in any kind of way, but right now an average child is about $9,400, but it takes about $16,000 to educate a special needs child. So there's a huge gap of about $7,000, and so to be able to alleviate some of that gap, this formula and this grant would be able to give to the schools up to an additional 30% on top of what they are already given in special education funding. And so with that, I would love to do a little bit more work in this area and really try our best to see what we can do with special education, working with everyone in all the departments. And so what I would like to do is see if we can move this to summer study.
You've heard the request. Without objection, Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and I would like to second that from Representative Harris. He's dealing with special education. He's got a $103 million fiscal note to go to finance and die. This will give you a little time to continue to talk about the issue. So I would second the motion for summer study.
Thank you. Without objection, House Bill 438 is sent to summer study.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. House item number 19, failed to mention this earlier. House Bill 1103 has been rolled to next year's calendar. That brings us to item number 22, House Bill 1001 by Representative Love. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned. Representative Love, you are recognized on House Bill 1001.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. House Bill 1001 seeks to address much of what we discussed this session about our students and the need for increased numbers of school counselors. There is a verbal amendment I would like to add to the bill, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Go ahead.
I would like to add a verbal amendment to have the number of school counselors per student to 350 instead of 250.
Properly motioned. We'll be voting on the verbal amendment. Without objection, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. We are back on the bill as amended. And Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, as we know, school counselors are integral to the school support system, and that I would be ready for any questions anybody has.
Does anybody have any questions for the sponsor? Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to the sponsor, since we have just significantly changed the fiscal impact of your bill, I assume we'll be getting a new note on that. Is that your understanding?
Yes, sir. I really hope that that's going to be the case.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll be voting on House Bill 1001. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members.
Item number 23, House Bill 1000 by Representative Love. Do I have a motion? Motion. Properly motioned. You are recognized. Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And of course, we know that we are trying to increase literacy for our students, and we know that sometimes class size can really affect the ability to help our children read. I know that our charge here is to weigh the content of a bill and not deal with the fiscal note, but I also recognize that it is sometimes a bit of a heavier burden to put on the hearts of members to vote for a bill with such a small fiscal note of $170 million. And so, Mr. Chairman, I just want to talk about this bill, and then I will roll it to the first of next year's calendar. Again, local education agencies, we need to make sure that if we can reduce our class size from 25 to 20, and sometimes from 20 to 15, respectfully. And so, Mr. Chairman, with that, I would request that we roll this to the first of next year's calendar.
Without objection, roll to the beginning of next year's calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 24, House Bill 73 by Representative Hurt.
Motion on that bill? Second.
Properly motioned. Representative Hurt, you are recognized on House Bill 73, and I believe you have an amendment with this.
Yes, sir, I do.
What is your drafting code on that?
005750.
All right. Properly motioned, and it does rewrite the bill, so if without objection, we'll go ahead and vote to adopt this amendment. All those in favor of adopting the amendment, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed say no. Ayes have it. We are back on House Bill 73 as amended. Representative Hurt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, it's an honor to have this type of legislation in front of you that we know will make differences in students. Recognizing an arising challenge in our schools, Governor Lee has brought forward a large investment in the mental health needs of the students in our K-12 schools. In a year where our state is blessed with abundant one-time funding, the governor believes that a wise use of these dollars is an investment that will have an impact well into the future. Allocating $250 million in his proposed budget, this legislation lays out a framework for how these dollars can be invested now and be utilized long term. After working with the Department of Education, Department of Mental Health, Department of Finance and Administration, and the State Treasurer's Office, we believe the amendment before you today will set a strong base for how these funds should be used and overseen. This is a start at what we hope will be a fund that builds and grows over time and has flexibility in how it can be used to address issues that are known now and unknown challenges that may face us in the future. As amended, this bill does the following. It establishes a K-12 Mental Health Trust Fund Act. Designate trustees to oversee the fund. Those trustees are the State Treasurer as the chair, the Comptroller, the Secretary of State, the Commissioner of Finance. Allows the trust to invest the funds for the first time in fiscal year 21-22. Creates two accounts for the funds to be deposited in. 90% of the investment will go into the endowment account and constitute the principal of the fund. 10% will be placed in a special reserve account. The fund is split this way to ensure a portion of this fund is liquid for use and distributions. The fund is allowed to accept gifts, contributions, bequests, etc. The principal of the fund may not be expended for any purpose. The trustees will annually determine how much funding can be allocated for expenditure based on the return. The funds made available will be used by the Department of Mental Health in consultation with the Department of Education and must be expended for use with K-12 students. And with that, we have folks here with the Department of Mental Health that can speak on it if needed, and the Department of Education. But with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you for that. Is anybody, Chairman Sapicki, you're recognized.
Thank you. Just the obvious question is, are you sure you can get a funding letter for this?
Representative Hurt, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Sapicki. We will work hard to get that, but I believe we will be successful.
Follow-up.
Chairman Sapicki.
I want to applaud you and the governor's office for recognizing this issue we have in Tennessee, especially in K-12 with what the kids have gone through over this last year and ongoing after that. And hopefully we can have funds available to make sure that we're able to address this need moving forward. So it's an outstanding bill. I think it goes right in hand with what we're trying to do to get Tennessee moving forward in education to be #1 in the country. Thank you.
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to compliment the sponsor on the bill, just as was mentioned, but also on his outstanding choice in neckties.
Any further questions? I will say that since last year's sponsor failed miserably in getting this bill across the finish line, I appreciate them finding somebody that could hopefully do it this year. Without any objection, we will be voting on House Bill 73. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, say no. Ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee.
That brings us to item number 25, House Bill 1591. Chairman White. Chairman White, I'm sorry, do I have a motion? Motion. Properly motioned. Chairman White, you are recognized on House Bill 1591.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. House Bill 1591, I'm bringing before the committee at the request of one of our senators. It deals with the third grade retention, and it basically says, based upon the student scores on an ELA portion of the student TCAP test, the waiver must be filed by the student's parents or guardians.
Thank you for that explanation, Chairman White. Anybody have any questions for the sponsor on the bill? Chairman Sapicki.
With learning loss and making sure that we can give that program enough time to get off the ground and be able to gather data back on that. So, committee, I would make a recommendation until we get that information back next year, and by all means, the Chairman White can bring this information back if he'd like to, that we send this to General Sub.
As a motion, do I have a second on that? Second. Without objection, referred to General Sub, House Bill 1591. That brings us to item number 26, House Bill 1305 by Chairman White. Do I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Properly motion. Chairman White, you are recognized on House Bill 1305.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. Moving right along to House Bill 1305. This one is dealing with open enrollment. Basically what this is asking for, open enrollment within the district, not outside the district. Requires each LEA to have an open enrollment period in which a parent or guardian of a student may seek to transfer the parent or guardian student to a school in the LEA that the student is not zoned to attend. It opens that up. It's really just clarification. I've asked this question many times. Don't we already have open enrollment? We do, but it's not really clarified exactly how the policy goes forward. This puts in place that an LEA will post a number of spaces available 14 days before the open enrollment period. The open enrollment period is for a period of 30 days, but it is to the district is when that 30 days will be. This gives a lot of discrepancy to the district. Number one, it allows the LEA to determine the capacity of how much space is available in each building, grade, class, and program every year. It requires to be transparent. The district needs to publish their capacity on the website 14 days before the open enrollment period. Say the 30-day window, wherever district shall have a 30-day window for the district's parent to submit applications. If there's space, then the parent, the child can be admitted. If too many people have applied, then a lottery is available in the bill to determine that. And it also says in district preference, no student who resides in another district should be admitted until all transfer requests from students within the district are approved. So this puts in place the policy and guidelines for every LA so that the parents will know if they want to go to another school other than the one they are zoned in within the LEA that they reside.
Thank you, Chairman White, for that explanation. Does anybody have any questions for the sponsor on the bill? Chairman Sapicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to clarify, open enrollment, students that are already zoned for a school will be able to go to that school as determined by the school board, that they're going to zone kids for a particular school. And then we're going to hold students out, extra spots available for students that may come into the district. And then on top of that, we're going to have some spots available for kids that want to transfer into that school system. If that's what I understand is that's correct, and I'm getting the shaky head behind you, so I understand I'm on the right path here.
Right. It's basically so the parents will know how many spaces or seats are available in each class or each school within that district, so that if a parent says, you know, this school over here would better fit my needs, whether it be location or convenience or whatnot, then they can apply to that. So it just gives transparency to the parents within the district.
Chairman Sapicki.
And I know you may not be able to answer this right now. Is it a first-come, first-served basis for those wanting to go to an unzoned school?
Chairman Watt.
I think first of all, the ones who are zoned there get that first. They have first thing, and then the LEA will post how many vacancies. Let me give you an example too, where this gives the LEA the discrepancy. I was talking to one LEA back home, and they have a unique situation. FedEx is in this district, and they employ a lot of IT, and a lot of IT comes from India. And so a lot of these families go back home to India in the summer. They don't come back until September. So they know how many of these kids are coming, whether it be 30 or 50. So they have to hold those. They can hold those spaces. They don't have to let those go. That's part of their determined capacity. So it gives a lot of flexibility to the LEA. So they determine how many seats they have based upon their history.
Last one.
Chairman Spickey.
So I think the bill's in a good position. I voted for this last year. One thing I'd like to do when it goes to full committee, just to make sure my athletic spidey senses are appeased here, I'd like to see TSSAA come to the committee, the full committee, and testify that this will not be used as a recruiting tool for athletes to be able to move or coaches to be able to recruit kids to come and play right away. So if we could just make sure this moves forward, make sure we get TSSAA to come on the record and state that for us. I'd appreciate it.
I would totally agree. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It's a good idea. Does anybody have any further questions for the sponsor?
Question on the bill.
Question's been called. Without objection, we'll be voting on House Bill 1305. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say no. On to full education. Good luck with that, Chairman. We are on to item number 27, House Bill 917 by Chairman White. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned, and I believe you have an amendment that was untimely filed. Is that correct?
You know, yes, sir, Chairman. Of course, it came to my attention we had to amend it one more time this morning, so it was late filed. I've got the amendment. I don't know if I need to put it on in full committee if we can get out of sub or go with the last one that's in here.
Well, let me say one thing. It does look like we will be back next week if you want some time to work on this.
Okay, can I go ahead and explain the bill and see if we can always change the amendment later if it
that is fine. So that puts us back on the amendment motion to consider. All right, we have a motion to consider amendment 6327, properly seconded. All those in favor of hearing this untimely filed amendment, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Whoa. Sorry, I've been corrected. 1 second. All right, being told that 5780 is the amendment drafting code. Is that correct?
No, we also got 6327.
Chairman, the latest one is 6327, but 5780 is the one that was timely filed.
6327 is what I had, but we're making sure that we had this all in the right posture here. All right, we're back on track here. So we will be voting to consider 6327. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. So we will be voting. Do I have a motion to? Thank you. Do I have a second? Properly seconded. We will be voting to adopt Amendment 6327. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. We are back on the bill as amended. House Bill 917. Chairman White, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, committee. I appreciate that indulgence. As we are all traveling the speed of light right now, and it's nice to get things in order. Committee, what I would like to do with this was brought to me by my municipality that I represent in District 83, Germantown, the Germantown City Government, and the municipality of Germantown City Schools. For those of you new on the committee, you may not know the background. Back in 2013, well, let me go back before that. Back in 2010, the city of Memphis, or the Shelby County, had two school districts, the city of Memphis and Shelby County Schools. About 2011, the city of Memphis gave up their charter of about 100,000 students. Those 100,000 students then went into the one system of Shelby County Schools for 150,000 students approximately, and that was all Memphis plus all of Shelby County, which included 6 municipalities that had their own board of mayor and aldermen and their own geographic boundaries: Germantown, Collierville, Lakeland, Arlington, Millington, and Bartlett. Well, in 2013, we set up, the General Assembly set up the municipal school districts where those 6 municipalities within the county could have their own school systems. And so they have, we set that up in 2013. They've all done very, very well. Everything went forward. But the community of Germantown, when they were settling their issue, Shelby County Schools said that they would like to keep 3 of the schools that are in the municipality or in the city limits of Germantown. Those schools were called Germantown High School, Germantown Middle School, and Germantown Elementary. They are legacy Germantown schools. But so the city of Germantown and the school system of Germantown did not fight it at the time because they wanted to go ahead and get things going in the municipal school district like the other 5 were doing. So they didn't push the case at that time. So 8 years later, those 3 schools are still in the municipal school district of Germantown and in the city limits of Germantown. The city of Germantown came to me and says, it's been 8 years, we're not able to get the Shelby County system to the table to talk to us anymore about these schools. There's approximately 60 acres in our community. We want to be able to control these schools. We want to be able to provide all the services which are required to do, safety guards, and other safety items around these schools. So they asked if I would file this bill, and so this is what I'm doing here is that basically it says that one LEA shall not operate in the geographic boundaries of another LEA without mutual consent. Now in 2017 we had an AG opinion that said a charter school could not be authorized and operate in another LEA. This happened down in Shelby County, and for those of you who remember Representative Ron Lawler, who was here at the time, he's the one that requested that. And so the AG opinion says 2 LEAs can operate in the same district without mutual consent. So what I'm asking for is that we push forward on this bill, mainly so I can get the 2 parties together to sit down and negotiate what we're going to do with these 3 legacy schools that are in Germantown Municipal School District, as well in the city of Germantown, so that we can move forward. This has been going on for 8 years, and I want to get them to the table and get something worked out. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion.
Thank you, Chairman White. Does anybody have any questions for the sponsor? Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman White, just want to figure out, if we can, if the bill goes through, bill passes, what happens to those students who are currently enrolled in that school?
That will be up to negotiations. My preference, and that I have communicated with, that those students continue at that school. Because these are high school students from, well, the elementary through high school, but especially the high school students will continue to be enrolled in these schools and move on through. First and foremost, protect the students. The issue with Germantown is that they would like to have control back over these schools to run in their municipal government. The school system of Germantown has the highest ACT scores in the state. They're doing very, very well. They want to control their own property within their own city limits and with their own school district.
Any other questions for the sponsor? Question has been called. Seeing no objections, we'll be voting on House Bill 917. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you, committee. I appreciate that very much.
Brings us to item number 28, House Bill 753. Do I have a motion? Second. Properly motioned. And Chairman White, do you have an amendment with this one as well?
6233.
6233 is what we have. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned and seconded. We will be voting. Does it rewrite the bill? Does it make the bill? We will go ahead and get it in the right posture and vote to adopt Amendment 6233. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All those opposed say no. The amendment is adopted, and we are back on House Bill 753 as amended. Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, committee. And this last one that I'm bringing before you today, the federal government requires, they created the IDEA, the Individuals with Disability Education Act. This is a federal program that requires that all students, regardless of their abilities, be given a free public education. Students with special education needs, though, of course, as they go through our LEAs, they have certain medical issues, and it becomes very, very expensive. Currently, as students with IEPs that have special needs, and the school systems the federal government sets up a reimbursement program, but Tennessee has not taken advantage of it. And basically, as our schools across the state, our 147 districts, 1,800 schools, it's costing the schools about $60 million in unreimbursed care that our schools are having to take care of. What this bill is asking for is that this sets up a clear reimbursement plan to draw down the federal dollars. And the Amendment 6233, we worked with TennCare on this, that there would only be 4 specialties that would be addressed in this. That's a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, a speech-language pathologist, and a audiologist. Only those things will be covered, and this will help draw down reimbursement dollars for our LEAs, which will help them with a lot of expenses that they have based upon our IEP program and the IDA program. With that, Mr. Chairman, any questions?
Thank you for that, Chairman White. Does anybody have any questions for our sponsor? Seeing none, we will be voting on House Bill 753. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. On to full education.
Thank you.
Brings us to item number 29, House Bill 580 by Chairman Reagan. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned, properly seconded. Chairman Reagan, you are recognized on House Bill 580, and I believe you also have an amendment. All right, that's what we have. Without objection, we will go ahead and vote to adopt Amendment 3704. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. We are back on the bill as amended. Chairman Reagan, you are recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members, this is a quote-unquote cleanup bill. Bill Dunn brought this last year, but unfortunately, as you know, COVID shut everything down in the Senate. So I'm back in front of you with this bill, and there are a few additions, Mr. Chairman. I'm told it was given to the Senate, but will be given to me. Those additions, I'm told, are inconsequential in terms of impact, so I would ask the committee's indulgence to add those between this committee and full committee. Essentially, this bill repeals outdated requirements, removes references to policy, which should refer to rule, and adds references to the high set and many code references where there are only GED references now. Most of this was put together, as I noted, last year. With that explanation, I'd be glad to go through all, okay.
Question has been called. Without objection, we'll be voting on House Bill 580. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. House Bill 580 moves on to full education. Takes us to item number 30, House Bill 1210 by Chairman Reagan. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned. And Chairman Reagan, I believe you also have an amendment with this.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and this rewrites the bill. I have 5519 as a drafting code.
All right. Do I have a motion? Properly motioned. Without objection, we'll be voting to adopt Amendment 5519. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it. We are back on the bill as amended. Chairman Reagan, you are recognized.
Thank you, members. I want you to bear with me just a minute here. There's some background that goes with this that is important before we consider the legislation itself. In 2011, the General Assembly passed the Professional Educators Collaborative Conferencing Act, and in part the act authorized the ability for teachers' unions to negotiate with school districts to withhold via payroll deductions members' union dues. But the act specifically prohibited districts from withholding any dues or funds that would be used for a political activity. Tennessee Code 49-5-608B states, quote, no collaborative conferencing shall be conducted on payroll deductions for political activity. In 2018, the Supreme Court, in a decision called Janus versus AFSEMC, which is a state employees union, or actually I guess Municipal, State, and County Employees Union, held that public sector negotiations with a government employer, unlike collective bargaining in the private sector, involves inherently political speech. Put another way, all members' dues to the public sector unions are for political activity, according to the Supreme Court. As such, Tennessee's current Collaborative Conferencing Act contradicts itself and leaves the LEAs subject to litigation on one hand, because current law allows conferencing over payroll deductions for union dues, and on the other hand, it strictly prohibits payroll deductions for political activities. I would emphasize, the Supreme Court was very clear in establishing that there is no distinction between the dues that are paid and for whatever purpose and political activities. As such, House Bill 1210 is necessary, this bill is necessary to remove the liability and bring Tennessee law in step with the Supreme Court decisions. Some other aspects of the bill is it allows flexibility to employees to opt out and stop paying dues at any time, and ensures that employees cannot be indebted to a union for future payments if they exercise their rights by declining to pay dues. Again, bear with me. I have an excerpt here from the bylaws of the TEA, wherein it says, by the way, this is from the 2014. I assume there's not too many changes since then. Active full-time membership dues of Tennessee Education Association for 2014-15 shall be $268.50 and shall increase 1.5% each year thereafter, rounding to the nearest half dollar. The Tennessee Education Association Board of Directors shall revisit the dues structure every 5 years to address adjustments in the dues calculation method. Should educators receive a salary increase greater than the cost of living adjustment in any given year, the TEA Board of Directors may add a special assessment to annual dues. So in other words, the union has reserved the right, if we give the General Assembly gives a raise to teachers that's greater than the cost of living, to extract their dues from it. I would also point out that the TEA only allows members to add or withdraw from their membership for a very limited period of time in the fall. I think it's from August to October. The bill before you allows them to do that at any time.
Members, you've heard the explanation of the bill. Does anybody have any questions for the sponsor? Question has been called. Oh, I'm sorry. Withdrawn. Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for entertaining questions. So the reason behind it is the cost of living increase provision?
No, the reason, sir, I'm sorry, Mr.
That's all right, Chairman Reagan.
The reason, sir, is we have a Supreme Court decision which says that any union dues between government employer and union negotiations, those are inherently political. And therefore, our own Tennessee Code 4-5-608B states that no collaborative conferencing shall be conducted, and it goes on to say payroll deductions for political activity. And we specified that. There were 2 or 3 of us on this committee that were around and had a chance to vote on that. The idea being that we did not want people to be forced to contribute to political causes that they might disagree with. Since the Supreme Court ruling, they basically said that any of those union dues are inseparable from political activities, and therefore we have a contradiction built in. Our LEAs are left hanging by virtue of the contradiction in our own state law. Did that answer your question?
It did, and
Representative Love.
I'm just wondering if there was any opportunity for these organizations to change their procedures to be in accordance with Supreme Court decision, but without us bringing legislation to.
Chairman Reagan.
The decision, and I read it, I will freely confess I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on television. I did sleep in Holiday Inn, though.
I got
you. The issue that, as I read that decision, was that the Supreme Court didn't leave any wiggle room there.
I see.
it draw a very clear distinction between private industry and entities, associations, and unions, and government. And specifically, it singled out government union activities and the contributions that those would make would be political.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Carringer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had some that called me and texted me and come by my office, and this was the first I've heard about the lawsuit and all that. So has anybody signed up, Chairman, to, I guess what?
I'll be glad to read
the
it
other
to you.
side,
I have it pulled up if you want it.
Or would it? No, I just want, I mean, I'm like, but nobody signed up to testify on this,
No.
correct? Okay. So this was something that was left out in all my discussions that I had.
My apologies.
Thanks.
Question has been called. Seeing no objections, we'll be voting on House Bill 1210. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. On to full education. We are up against the clock a little bit here, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Without objection, we stand adjourned. We will roll the remaining bills to next week's calendar.